Here in my hand you can see a gold Rolex Datejust. A beautiful and very rare watch that is also of course very expensive. But what makes this piece special is that it is a piece of a puzzle. A piece of a puzzle with a dial that could prove that the so-called obsidian dials never existed on a Rolex Datejust. A mysterious dial, a hot collector's item and an unsolved mystery that fascinates watch lovers worldwide. The Rolex Datejust Obsidian. But is it really obsidian or something completely different? The truth might surprise you and excite you. So just take a look at this Rolex Datejust, reference 1601 from 1969. At first glance, a normal yet truly rare Datejust. But look what happens to the dial when we turn up the brightness. Impressive, isn't it? When I held this Datejust in my hands for the first time, I immediately thought of a Datejust with the so-called obsidian dial, which has caused a lot of excitement in the Rolex collector community in recent years. This pieces with obsidian dial has become one of those holy grail watches from Rolex. It is one of the rarest watches ever and has perhaps been the most sought after Rolex with a stone dial in the last 2 years. But as captivating as it looks, the history of these dials is far from clear. So what is this Rolex Datejust reference 1601 now? Is it an obsidian or something completely different? Obsidian is actually volcanic glass that is formed when molten lava cools very quickly. In nature, this glass is usually somewhat black and somewhat transparent. Because the obsidian is mounted on brass dial base plates, the background shines through where the glass is more transparent, giving each dial a unique pattern and appearance. Next, you will see several examples of a Rolex Datejust with obsidian dial from the 70s that have come to light in recent years. In the last 5 years, more and more of these obsidian dials have appeared in early Rolex Datejust models from 1970 to 1977 with 4-digit reference numbers. I have counted about 10 to 12 examples that have recently come up. But the more of these pieces that turned up, the stronger the doubts about the nature of the dials became. The patterns that can be seen are a bit too smooth for what you would find in natural obsidian. If you take a second closer look at those Datejusts, you will notice that most of the translucent area is near the edge, especially on the left side, near the date window, the Rolex crown and the center. In other words, in areas surrounded by non-glass. Furthermore, what we don't see or have not yet seen is a catalog evidence that Datejust at the time actually came with obsidian dials. Here's a catalog extract from the day-date with stone dial configurations and a Rolex day-date reference 18238 with an obsidian dial from the 1990s. Interestingly, stone dials were first fitted in Datejusts before they become a trademark of the day-date collection in 1978. So you can find these catalog extracts for the day-date, but not for the earlier 4-digit Datejust references. And the doubts that these dials are actually obsidian are further strengthened when you look at how obsidian usually appears on watch dials. As you can see from this example of the reference 18238 day-date, the pattern is much more veined and much less smooth. And it's not just this example. You can also find obsidian dials on the 1970s Cellini reference 5071 or the Universal Genève Golden Shadows. So what is this? When we look at all this evidence, what are we looking at? We have put together 3 theories. Theory 1. The first explanation that came up was that the Datejust dials are actually obsidian. In this, the glass would have been painted and glued to the base plate. Over time, the dial may have lifted and the material may have reacted, causing the effect areas to become translucent or tint. This could explain why the patterns start at the edges and the center. Theory number 2. A very trivial possibility could be that these dials were never really Rolex dials, but simply fakes. However, this theory can be proven wrong by an example sold in 2021 through our colleagues at Loop This. It is a Datejust 1601 with a waterproof origin, an Omani Kanja example that comes from the royal family. Erik Q himself, co-founder of Loop This, has evaluated every aspect of the watch and confirmed its originality, including the font and color on the dial. So, the dials are original Rolex dials from that period. Let's move on to theory number 3, and this is currently the leading theory. It agrees with the theory number 1 that the tinted areas are patinated parts of the original dial. However, it is not obsidian, but onyx. Onyx is a mineral, not glass, which is not completely deep black in nature, as it appears on Rolex dials, but is dyed to become darker and more uniform. According to Erik Q, this is also common practice in jewelry making. The patinated onyx theory is currently the accepted theory in this era. It was put forward by two vintage watch experts, Erik Q and Erik Gustafson from Hairspring Watches. But it lacked the intermediate step. So far we have seen some heavily patinated dials and, on the other hand, clean onyx dials. But what happened between the blackest onyx dial leaving the factory and the current obsidian dials coming onto the market? So let's move on to our today's Datejust, which can be considered the missing piece of the puzzle. In 1969, Rolex Datejust reference 1601 with an onyx dial and a light patina. At first glance, the marks at 6 o'clock and the wear on the left edge are barely visible. It is only when the light is right and from the right angle that it becomes clear that there is more to it than meets the eye. The left edge of the dial begins to shimmer slightly and dots appear around the signature at 6 and 10 o'clock. For some reason, this piece has simply not aged as much as others over the time. A galaxy on your wrist. The missing link onyx to obsidian example is unique. It is difficult to determine the reason for this. Our interpretation is that it is an early example and the glue varnish dye used is simply different from later versions. The pieces we have seen on the market are mostly from 1972 to 1977. Our example dates from around 1969. We also asked two industry experts, Erik Q, co-founder of Loop This, and Erik Gustafson, founder of Hairspring Watches, for their opinion on this example. Erik Gustafson's answer was, "What a strange looking one. Wow, might be a very early change starting, effectively the start of that patina." And Erik Q goes even further. "This is exact what I would call proof that they are just degraded onyx dials." So let's conclude. Over the past few years, the elusive Rolex Datejust Obsidian has emerged as one of the hottest vintage stone set dials. It has taken its place among the greats on the Mount Olympus of vintage Rolex watches. However, the exact nature of these dials has always been somewhat of a mystery, awaiting a judgment. Until now, through the extensive work of Erik Q and Erik Gustafson, along with additional evidence supporting their missing link theory, we can come to the conclusion that the Obsidian Datejust is more of a collector's term. The correct description is patinated or degraded onyx. We think that this does not necessarily detract from the overall collectability of these pieces. It's still a rare pattern on already super rare examples with a stone dial. And you can't argue with aesthetics. Our example in particular is a stunning black and gold Rolex Datejust from the late 60s, featuring a deep black onyx dial with a hint of early obsidian patina in a fascinating galaxy pattern. It is a significant watch, a unique sight, a field study in true aging, and above all, an impressively beautiful watch. So thank you for taking the time to learn more about the fascinating history of the Rolex Datejust Obsidian. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel to never miss any of our exciting content. I'm Felix and I look forward to see you in the next video. Until then, stay curious and see you soon.